Hi, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Me, You, and Who. Today, we are talking with Chelsea and Sarah, two amazing donors who are going to give us a look back on their journey, their why, and just how this amazing choice that they made to help another family grow in this way has changed their life as well. It was so much fun talking with Chelsea and Sarah. And while their journeys are two different types of journeys, they are both so amazing. And it was just so much fun listening and talking to them. So please enjoy listening to our donors, Chelsea and Sarah. Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day. Hi, guys. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for being with us. Okay, so Sarah, Chelsea, you two amazing egg donors. Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to have you guys here. Okay, just off the bat, like, how is this even a thing for you guys? How did this even come to be?
Um, okay, I guess I'll go first.
Yeah, go, Chelsea.
So it kind of became a joke years and years ago. Really, truly, I'm not kidding. It was just like funny things my friends and I would do for money. I was like early 20s. And so I actually grew up with a friend who was an egg donor. And
Oh, how
so,
cool.
yeah. And so years later, my mom and I ended up chatting and she was like, did you know so and so was an egg donor? And I was like, no, is that how she was able to travel? Like I'm not kidding you. Like travel, just everything, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Paid for go back to school, all these things. And so she's like, you should reach out to her. So I was like, we'll see. Well, somehow somebody magically beat me to it, and actually who donated through Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions and contacted me. She was like, you should be an egg donor. And I was like, that's so weird because I was actually just thinking about this. And
Oh my gosh, how funny.
yeah. And so I'll be a little bit more transparent. I'm a single mom, and how I mean, I'll just be honest. I got pregnant on a one night stand and I was like, oh, okay, this is, you know, not
It's
everybody is
happening.
as fortunate. And so it was one of those like being a
Yeah.
single mom and my son and I co-parent and there's just so many things that I was just like, it was a beautiful blessing. And I was like, there's so many families out there that married or unmarried that are this is what they want and it's not happening for them.
Mhm.
And so I was like, why not? I kind of feel I don't want to have another kid. I feel like I'm being selfish. And so let's just do it. It took me about 2 months to submit my application. I was going really back and forth about it. My family was so excited. They were like, "Do it. This is so your forte." And I did, and I
Mm.
got accepted, and it was the best thing I ever did.
Oh my gosh,
Mm.
that's amazing. And how unique that your family was the one that was like, "Oh no, this is totally your thing. You should totally just do
Oh,
this."
100, and it wasn't like don't get me wrong. It wasn't like the money thing. It had nothing to do with that. It was just like um uh, we we have a really fun, very unique family, and we all have just kind of done some weird things in general. And my mom knew I didn't want to have any more kids. My sisters, I have two sisters, but I have one niece. She's 15. Like none of us are planning to have more children. None of us are
Mhm.
married.
Mhm.
And I was like, why not? And so I'm a
Yeah.
very healthy. I have great family health history. And so I'm like, I just feel like we're withholding something from the world. And so we did. And my family was so excited about it. And so we were like, why not? Like legitimately, they were the ones that were like, please, 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 you need to do this.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
it's
Okay,
kinda
Sarah,
wild.
what about you? How did like this fall into your lap?
Yeah, no, well, Chelsea, I think that's awesome, and I think kind of starting off, mine was a little similar in the sense that I also had a running joke with friends being in, middle of college, actually, during, my journey, when we had the running joke of, "What would you do for money?" kinda
Yep.
situation, and,
Sure.
honestly, it was one of those things where we had heard about it. I didn't know anyone personally who had ever done it. Again, I was in the middle of college, so I was, like, 21, at the time, and so, wasn't really intending, just didn't really have any plans or forethoughts about, starting a family in the near future, really,
Right.
or at the time, getting married or anything like that. Um, and I knew kind of given what I chose to do career-wise, that it was something that it could have very well been a while anyways.
Mm,
Um, and so it had gotten brought up sort of as not necessarily as a joke, but sort of an idea that seemed almost like so far-fetched,
Mm,
amongst friends, and I was like, "Well, what if you donated it?" Like, how much do people make donated eggs? You've heard of it, or at least I had, but, like I said, had never really known what that process looked like or, anyone who had gone through it. And so had, started actually just out of curiosity looking around a little bit. I think similar to what Chelsea had said, um, having a healthy family history, I think being really, really fortunate to have good
mm,
health personally.
yeah,
mhm.
I think just more of like knowing that I was in a place where it was, something that many people will consider a gift. I think it is a gift.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I
massive.
think too, exactly. And I think knowing there's a lot of people out there that don't have that and something that it's not something to take for granted in that. Even something like fertility and good health.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
for me, I actually had put in, like, you look, put in your little profile and, you say what your
Sure.
aptitudes are as a kid and all those kinds of things. And to be honest, I never expected to actually get picked. And it was one of those things like, well, why the heck not? And I think it was about 2 months later or so, I actually got a call from one of Egg Donor Solutions. It was Katie, who I actually now still keep in touch with,
Yeah.
who I believe who had contacted me saying, "Hey, there's this family who is interested in, seeing you as an egg donor. Would you be interested?" Um, and again, at the time, it was like, "Really? Like
yeah,
this
yes,
actually
yes, it's the
happened?"
wildest phone call. You're like, "Wait,
Yeah.
this is a thing?" It's
Yeah, exactly.
yes,
It's like always the thing that trumps like the first facts that
yes.
you give, when you have to give a weird fact about
You're like,
yourself.
"I'm never gonna get a call."
Um, Yeah, exactly. Be like, "Well, who is gonna call me?"
Yes.
Who is I mean, again, you just kinda think to yourself, like, I mean, just in general, like, again, what really are the odds here? Um, and, I did. So, when I got chosen, it really didn't take very long, I think, to make the decision to go through with it. And I think similar to what Chelsea said, it really was one of the best experiences.
Okay.
I think it was one for me, I um I think at that time in life and kind of what I had then, it was something that I think it was the perfect time for me to do it. And I think looking back,
Mm.
um, at the time I wasn't have I didn't have kids. And I think now being more in the mindset, in the chapter of life where like, me and my husband want to start a family soon, I think
Mhm.
just meaning that much more, knowing that, you can help a family, I think through what I thought was very minimal things,
Yeah.
and following a few
Huge,
rules and
yeah.
things. So,
I love
um,
that you don't have kids yet and you saw such a significance, and then me looking at it me having a kid, viewing the same amount of significance, I think us as
yeah,
women, it
Yeah.
makes it so beautiful being a woman, you know? You
Oh my
can
very
gosh,
much
see
so.
just
yes.
that
Oh,
value of life.
I could
Yeah.
not have said it better myself, Chelsea. I think it's so funny because I think both of you were kind of like you were just joking about. I mean, Sarah, you said, oh, hey, what would we do for money in college? I mean, gosh, when we're all eating ramen and broke and student debt,
Yeah,
debt and all of the
yeah.
things. And then Chelsea, where you had the experience of, oh, that person I knew and they traveled and they did this and like you said, you had a kid and you were like, I'm good. And, all of that. Like, I
Yeah,
think it's so fast, like just amazing that you guys kind of came from this fun little seed and then it just was like, oh no, this is way bigger than just that. I
way
mean, don't get
bigger.
me wrong, compensation is always nice, but I mean, there are way easier things to do than
A
this.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's not the easiest process. I mean, let's be honest. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so to go back just a little bit, Chelsea, I know you said someone kind of beat you to the punch and like reached out to you from Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions. And then Sarah, how did you find us?
I think Google, and I think I did a lot of vetting to make sure y'all weren't like a pyramid scheme or anything.
Oh,
Um,
that's what I thought. That's so funny.
yeah,
Because I went to high school with the girls, so
exactly, and I remember distinctly, like, I was around my girlfriends, and it's so funny now, like, I mean, I donated, um, almost 8 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
8, I think, and I think just being at that, like, quintessential age when when you think you're an adult a little bit, and now looking back, you realize
yeah.
you weren't, and and you have, like, all of your, like, knucklehead friends that are the same way, and, distinctly remember all of us sitting around my computer, like, trying to go through and do, like, the FBI thing that girls do where they're like, "Okay, well, let's find out everything about this place. Let's just make sure, because like, we don't also want you to get murdered
Yeah.
somewhere."
Sure. Well, and
Um,
it's 8 years ago internet too. So like there's only
Yeah.
so much you can do.
Wait,
yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Sarah, how old were you when you donated?
I was 22 when I actually donated. I
22.
just turned
I was
22.
considered an old donor. I donated at 28.
Oh,
And
really?
I'll be honest, I look back at, the requirements and don't I was not in the same mindset. I could not have done that at 22.
I think for me, it was like, you know, I knew that I wanted to do a career where it was gonna require me to be in more school. I knew it was gonna require
Mm-hmm.
something that
Yeah.
I just personally, um and again, like, obviously, like, have the age at which you wanna have children or how it happens or the place you're at when you start this journey, I think is so personal. There's no right or wrong decision with it.
Very
But
much
I knew
Mm-hmm.
for me, at least, it was something that, like, I wasn't in the mindset to be a parent. And it was
so.
something that, again, it wasn't obviously that I was against, but it was something that I knew I was healthy. I knew,
Yeah.
with, you know, I had enough, I think, knowledge and understanding, through friends and through family, um, and hopefully a little bit of empathy, I think, just to understand that, fertility is not this, for some, so for some, it's like, quick, good and go,
Yeah.
doesn't take much, but for
Mm-hmm.
others, it's so much more. I think it's so, I am, and again, I say this now, still not having children, but I think still so deeply personal,
Yeah. Yeah.
and can
I
be
agree.
painful. And I, I think at that time that was something that I didn't know much, but I knew that,
Yeah.
That's
Well,
so
and
know.
gosh,
it's so unique. I love that. I love hearing that.
yeah. And again, like 8 years ago, I think so much has changed in the
Yeah.
industry from then to now.
So
And
much. Yeah.
so many things are different and people are talking about it more and just things like that. And so I think it's huge that you guys did this at that time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and all of that. No, that's absolutely amazing. Okay, so you were vetting us, Sarah, and decided that we were not a pyramid scheme, and so yay, and I'm so glad.
That is funny. That is funny because I low key felt kind of the same way, but I was like, "Oh, I'll wait for someone
I
else to
think
say."
everyone's just got to check it a little bit. It's like vetting a guy. It's like just vetting someone if you ever, like, go on a date, and you just got to make sure.
Sure.
You just got to check the LinkedIn. You got to check the receipts and things, and
You're a wise woman. You're a
as I
wise woman.
Absolutely.
as I end up on a podcast with y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well,
then
it's interesting too because I feel like especially now I've seen, people trying to match like independently, like on Facebook groups and things like that. And, that to me, I mean, I'm mostly in surrogacy land. And so when I think egg donation, I'm like that. I mean, both of them, honestly, I'm just like, that is so Wild West, y'all.
So I tell everybody, like that's what I do love about egg donor and surrogate solutions. Like it's fresh versus frozen. So
Hmm.
I had friends that
Hmm.
have actually donated to banks, and I'm like, you couldn't pay me money to donate to a bank.
Yeah. What makes you say that?
You're kind of, I know you're a number. I know you get the egg donor number, like I get that, but you just kind of donate to the bank, and they're like, bye, and then they freeze your eggs, and somebody can go shopping in the next 10 years. Like what I loved about egg donor solutions is I didn't feel like a number. I was a number.
I was
But
gonna say you're a number
but
because
I was
of
valued. I was
right, but
valued
you
so
weren't
much.
uh-huh.
Yes. Like, did I know that, like, my care coordinator, who I still love, and I do have to email you back, Melissa, I promise I will, okay? I have not forgotten about you, Melissa.
Shout out to you, Melissa.
That's my girl.
I love it. I
But
love
she
it.
made me feel so special and valued, and even if I had never known my IPs or anything, had been in communication, I still always felt valued by you guys 110%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think
Was
too, one thing to add, and this is a little bit off, so this is, I'll kind of be quick about this, I think, without it being like a tangent or very off topic, but I think also like having it been years later, I mean, I reached out in 2017 even to hear what happened with the outcome
Mhm.
of the pregnancy, the first
Mhm.
one in which my eggs were used.
yeah,
And I got a response from the same people. And I think also like Chelsea, I had a really similar experience to you. And I think on top of that, like my healthcare team with that and like the reproductive
yeah,
endocrinologist involved and like just
yeah.
I think that made such a difference because again, when you're working with a high
Huge.
volume of patients and with families,
Mhm.
Mhm.
having I think
Mhm.
now been in the healthcare industry myself and knowing like again, you do have to have a certain level of connectedness and I think really attention to people and to detail.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
love hearing
yeah.
how cared for you are because yes, for all intents and purposes, egg donors have to have a number, but that doesn't mean you are that number.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And you are still you're Chelsea, you're Sarah, and
Yeah,
Melissa knows that, and Sarah, I think you had Callie, and she knows that, and like it's yeah, you're so right. Just because and I know it's kind of gone away from that. It's, more known donor cycles versus, once upon a time it was all anonymous, quote, quote.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's important. You're doing big things. And that doesn't
yeah,
mean that your feelings are not part of that. And that
yeah.
you, yeah, should be treated as just kind of, okay, we're going to do, get from point A to point B and be done.
Like, don't get
And
me wrong, I feel like I was still okay with being like, "This is not about me." Like, this is the whole
mhm.
point.
yeah.
This is an egg donation. Like, I went into this selflessly, and I'm still getting a very, like, a huge blessing that I did have a good blessing kind of come from this, quote, unquote. But so I was okay of being like, "You can treat me like a patient. Like, it's fine. You don't have to." And then
Mm.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, thank you so much," you know?
Yeah.
So going to the matching process, I know you both kind of had two different journeys, and Sarah, yours was not a known donor cycle, so anonymous for lack of a better word, but and you found out in 2017 just what that everything that came from that. Tell us.
Mhm.
My parents, or my intended parents, excuse me, they were trying to have a kid for 10 years. And
Mm,
so it was something that, again, like I went through the screening, I was told I was healthy and everything, and they did all the biomarker checks and what they need to do.
sure.
But again, it was like, I think for me, sort of being optimistically cautious, just hoping and praying it was going to be something that was good, but knowing again, it's a complex process,
Yeah,
right, for someone to
Yeah,
yeah,
carry a baby.
yeah.
And so I think for um, one thing that was really, really touching when I was in my process of being an egg donor, and we were just getting ready to start the medications themselves, and they were going to send in all that. And, you're kind of getting ready to go through that regimen.
yeah.
And they had sent me, it was anonymous, so I guess it was through Egg Donor Solutions, but they sent me like the sweetest letter that it was just basically
Mm.
expressing their gratitude. And I still have it saved. And I'm not a crier, I don't tear up a ton. Like, I don't cry at Titanic. My husband thinks I'm like a sociopath. Um, but I distinctly remember like walking outside of a class and getting the email and just sort of reading it as people were passing by and just like filling up with tears because it was just such a
Mm.
touching gesture that they obviously didn't have to do it, but it was basically talking a little bit about their background. I believe it was two men that were married. They lived in an adjacent state and were just describing kind of like their journey and what they were really, really hoping out of this. They had mentioned something to the effect of calling me their egg donor angel, which I'm like, oh my gosh, like, like, yeah. So as
Oh.
y'all,
Wait, is that really what they called you?
I have to go back and look
That's
at the
what my
copy, but
family calls me. They got me an ornament with an
oh, not
angel on
the
it for
ornament.
Christmas. I really do, I have it. I really
No.
do.
You
It's I'm their egg donor
guys.
angel. That's what they call me. I have it in
That's
a note, and then they
oh,
have me I have an ornament.
okay. You'll have to send it to me because like it is so. It was just like I said, it was one of those things. Like I was 21, about to turn 22. Like I don't know what the frick I'm doing.
Sure.
You're at that time in life too where you're just trying to figure out like the world is your
Mhm.
oyster, but trying to figure out how do you even make those decisions. And I think just I'm kind of like, well, I think this is something I'm gonna do. And I think just
Sure.
to um I think just receive such open arms. I think even through people that I didn't know, I didn't know their names. I think just was I think really spoke to like even being anonymous how moving it was.
Mhm.
Um and
Mhm.
then so that had happened. I donated in the spring, and then in the fall I it was just one of those things I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did that a few months ago. I should
Yeah, I
probably
know,
like
it's
follow up
good.
and see."
Oh
Yeah, I had moved at the
yeah.
time, I had changed jobs and stuff, I graduated, and so I was like, "Oh, I should probably like I want to know what happened." And I reached out and they had mentioned, they had a healthy baby girl who was born.
Oh,
Um,
Oh, yay.
yes. Or not born, but she was on her way. I guess that doesn't
Yeah.
mathematically make
yeah.
sense, but they were on her way. And then I actually followed up a year after that, and they had mentioned she was born and she was healthy. And
Oh, I love
so,
that.
yeah. So I think even like, um, and again, it's one of those things we haven't met. Maybe one day, I think we had talked about it through the pandemic and things, and um, we had both been kind of open to it in the future.
Well, and letters like that are the why. Oh, they're the why. Don't get me wrong. Like it's fun to travel if you get the opportunity to, and all of that jazz, but just
Yeah.
that why of at
Mhm.
the end of the day, just, oh my gosh, you were an egg donor angel.
Egg donor angel. Look at all
It's
of
like
us.
look
Right.
at you guys. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Chelsea, I know yours was different in that you did a known cycle, meaning like met, communicated with your intended parents. What kind of, how did you decipher that that was the choice that you wanted to make? And then how has that been since?
Okay, so I was open, like I said, I was open to the known cycle, but that's not really how it started.
You're
So
fine. You're fine. Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
my our doctor at the time, great doctor, he was just very old school about things. And so as you know how the egg donation process works, you go fly to wherever your family's clinic
Right. You
is,
have to go to the
and
clinic, you
then
have your medical
yes,
screening appointment,
right.
the
And
psychological
then
evaluation, all of that.
well, then you have your appointments here, your follow-up appointments all
Yes, at
in
the
your
monitoring
state.
clinic.
So
Mhm.
your monitoring clinic. Well, the doctor didn't want that. And so he wanted me to do all my monitoring appointments in that city. So that is a plane trip. And so they were
Mm.
like, so here I am. Yeah, I work full time. I'm a single mom. Like, so um, sweet Melissa called me and was just like, okay, so we have a problem. So at the time, I did not know my family. I did not know anything about
Sure.
them. And so she was like, I just want to give you like a heads up. This is what the doctor's requesting. And so I was like, oh God, like all I'm thinking is like, okay, like, am I not allowed to do this anymore? What do I do? And so she was like,
Wow.
well, the, the family has to, there's just so many things that now they have to do. And so, I was like, well, yeah, well, and that's when I was told about how much they invested into this, and I was like, well, I'm not leaving. And they're like, well, what? I was like, they're like, we told them that possibly like getting a new donor was probably their best bet because you don't live in that city. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do it. I'll call my boss. And I was like, sign me up.
Oh.
And they were like, oh my gosh. So I will never forget this. I was sitting in a Publix parking lot, sobbing my eyes out with Melissa on the phone, and I was like,
Oh.
I can't say no. Like, I can't say no to this family. I'm not doing that to them. And so she was like, okay, let me call her back. And so she calls the
Oh.
IP, they call me back. And so she was like, she's incredibly thankful. The mom, I told her everything. But we have a question. And so I was like, okay. And so they're like, would you be open to meeting each other? And she just wants to thank you in person. And I was like, are you joking? Like, "Me? Are you sure?" And I immediately am like, it's the typical woman things, like, "Do I look like my headshot? Do I look like this?" Like, "Oh my gosh," like, I totally was freaking out, like, Am I an imposter?" No. And so I, so here's the funnier thing. So I thought I was going to meet them after my retrieval. And so, um, we did the appointments and I landed in their city and, I wasn't even able to check into my hotel, and they were like, "Okay, we'll see you in 45 minutes." And I was like, "Uh,
Oh,
okay."
okay.
So I got ready to Starbucks bathroom, and I'm, like, trying not to cry this entire time, like, it's happening.
Oh
We
my
had
gosh.
a 45-minute appointment set up, and we stayed in the Starbucks for 6.5 hours, and we just sat and chatted and talked about life,
Oh.
and she gave me a really sweet box, and it had some handwritten notes in it that she and it was
Mm.
it was funny, I was FaceTiming my friends. I didn't wanna open anything because she's like, "Don't open anything," and it had, like, she got me a mug and some gift cards, very generous, very
Yeah.
kind, and, she's like, "Don't open them. Take it back to your hotel," and I was like, "Okay," and then that's when I found the note, and I was like,
Yeah, speaking of
sobbing my eyes
tears.
out. Yes,
Oh,
and
yes.
it was the most beautiful and it was like, this is actually freaking happening right now.
Yeah. Well, and it's so, I mean, yes, like Chelsea, yours is so unique in, just how it happened and how, just you guys have that connection. And then
Mm.
Sarah, I know like, but you haven't met them, but you still have that gorgeous
Yes,
connection. Like
yes,
those letters and just knowing and you know that like the positive outcome that came from it. And so
mm,
what, just the fact that you're able to just make that connection with those intended parents is huge. It's
yeah,
just huge.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me have you guys answer this question. Looking back, I'm glad I was an egg donor because.
Um, I'm glad I was an egg donor because women are I'm saying it, we're badasses. We are. Like, look what we get
Yes.
to do. Look, like, you were a surrogate. You
Mhm.
carried somebody else's child, like, to bring life into this world, and it's a very, I feel like if you would have asked Chelsea before the process, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm an egg donor because I needed some money," you know? And then
Mm.
afterwards, it's, um, because I got to start a generation for a family. Like, I
Mm.
celebrated my 30th birthday last oh my god, I'm getting old 2 years ago. Oh my god. How old am I? When I celebrated my 30th birthday, it's the 30th year, and I woke up and was just like, it my birthday felt very wild to celebrate. It was just like,
Mm.
if it was not for me on this planet, like, I I could not have done that. Like, this was
Mhm.
it. This is what I was called to do.
I'm glad I was an egg donor because I think through prefacing again, the process itself was definitely more, it was more hard, it was harder in some senses, I think, than I'm giving it. But I think for a relative,
Yeah.
for a few additional things, a couple things for me to do, I got to give a family, you know, the gift of a lifetime.
Mm. Mhm.
Literally, like, you're their
Yeah.
angel. You're their angel.
Oh my god,
100%.
the ornaments!
The
Like, but
ornament.
but it's so funny because it's like you mentioned though, it's I think that's a good point. It's a friend, and you have your friends that
Mhm.
see you through chapters of life, and then you have, friends or connections like that that it's just this thing you're like, don't know if, how God or fate or whatever, people,
Yeah.
y'all may believe in brought you two on this path, but the fact that you're
Mhm.
here and, importantly, the fact that not only that, but
Yeah.
like they get to have their life and fulfill their purpose because of that
Mhm.
gift. And I think also to know you're like, just, you're rooting for them. And I think just to
Yeah.
learn, that
Yeah.
it turned out good and they got that kind of happiness. It's like
Yeah.
those little glimmers of humanity, I think, within that process that I really underestimated.
Mm. Well, it's that why, right? Like I
Oh,
mean,
gosh.
again, like it's just that why. You wouldn't do this if you weren't, like you said, Sarah, rooting for them or,
Mhm.
and I mean, you're so right. Emotional capital, finance, all of the
Yeah.
things that got intended parents to where they are, whether it's trauma or this is the only way we're going to be able to have a genetic family or
Mhm.
whatever their story may be, for any egg donor, you have to
Yeah.
care about that and you're rooting
It's
for,
true.
those intended parents. And I mean, Chelsea, like you said, you had friends who did it for like a frozen bank. You don't know how those things are going to end.
Um,
You won't have an idea of that.
oh,
But
I
in,
don't love that.
this situation,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
that you have these amazing intended parents, both of you, and you get
Yeah.
to hear like, oh, yes, oh, we just celebrated a first birthday or, like just things like that. Okay, so what do you think any potential intended parent or any potential woman who's thinking about becoming an egg donor, what do you think they need to know?
My mom always said this really cliche statement, "Lower your expectations and raise reality." You know,
Oh,
this is,
interesting.
yeah, it's at the end of the day, this is somebody else's journey, and how they kind of wanna go about things, like, I love what I love about Egg Donor Solutions is, we do the psych eval and things like that, just to make sure, like, you're good with that, and
Mhm.
keeping the heart in it, but keeping it transactional. But so when something does happen, you're like, "This is awesome." Like, this is it's a little win, and, like, keeping just that, just an understanding attitude through the process.
An
Yeah.
understanding attitude through the process, meaning I think you've said it a couple of times, like this was, yes, it's about me in the sense that I'm going through this process
Yes.
physically, but ultimately I'm doing this for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. 110%. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think kinda similar to what Chelsea said, I think be cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooh, I like that.
yeah, and I think also recognizing that, like, realistically, again, it's wonderful that there's services like this available and there's companies like Egg Donor Solutions that are available, but I think also, like, no one dreams of this, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Like,
Mm.
a lot of people who, again, are in this may not, may not necessarily, again, want to be in the position they're in. For example, if maybe,
mm,
again, they're having problems with fertility or they're having problems with X, Y, and Z, and I think
yeah.
recognizing that, like, as someone who chose to be anonymous, I think recognizing that, like, wherever you are at, as long as you understand, again, like, the stuff that we're supposed to know through psych evaluations and stuff, you
Sure,
guys
of
screen us
course.
Yeah.
for, I think knowing, like, this is in some ways transactional, but at the end of
Mhm.
the day, like, again, keeping in mind the bigger scheme of things, and I think recognizing that, like, again, for example, if, you know, if something doesn't happen or maybe parents don't
Mhm.
reach out, and I think maybe there were some expectations that may not necessarily have gone, the way you sort of rationalize them, I guess, at the
Mhm.
beginning. I think
Mm.
back to the whole being cautiously optimistic, but I think also having empathy for just this is a very human process, like,
Yeah.
not to get too
Yeah.
touchy about
Yeah.
it, but
Mhm.
and I think, recognizing that even if you don't ever meet them or even if the outcome doesn't happen the way it is, I think just remembering also, like, this is about us as donors trying to give
Mhm.
something, um,
Mhm.
to someone who needs it.
I
And I
agree.
think that's kind of the bare bones idea of this process. And I think just to
Mhm.
really keep that in the back of our minds, and I think just to have empathy with that.
I love
'Cause
Yeah.
I
I
think it's
love
hard when,
that.
you're learning how to, inject you're learning how to use the medications, or you're learning how to do X, Y, and Z. I remember I had a grad party, and my mom was very supportive, and we had to leave real quick. I was like, "I'm gonna go to the bathroom." We went out to, like and we went into the bathroom, and I was like, "Can you read my injection real quick?" And it was just
Here I
like
am
this
doing my
yeah,
metaphor shots.
yeah, exactly. And I think just the stuff that, like, it's when else, like, it's just such a different scenario, and I think
Mm.
just to kind of have gratitude for that in hindsight, I think is a big thing.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, and
Go
it's
with the
so
flow.
oh, go with the flow.
Like, be nice to your
Yes.
doctors, be nice to the clinics, show up to your freaking appointments on time.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah, like, no, I'm serious. The things
The
that
bar
I've
is
heard
low for
the bar
expectations.
is low, like, just be nice.
Yeah.
Be
Just be
nice.
nice. Just be nice. We say that in general. Just be nice in general.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yes.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, I know you guys have mentioned like, hey, keep it transactional, expectations, set the bar low and things like that. And I think what also you have said previous is you had your coordinator, you had Melissa crying on the
Yeah.
phone with you in a Publix
Yeah.
parking lot. You have Callie that you can reach out to. Hey, just checking in. How are things? Like
Yeah.
you have someone there that while you are also showing empathy in the process, someone else is giving you that empathy as well.
Yeah.
If,
Yes.
It
whether
definitely is.
Yeah.
intended parents or maybe they're going through
Yeah.
something and of course you might not know what that is and all of those things, but you at least have that coordinator that's holding your hand the whole way and being there for you.
That's
And
I
That's
think
a good
one of the
point.
coolest, most unique things that was provided by Egg Donor Solutions.
is the coordinator.
Oh,
1,000%.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
what she did, and I was just like, "Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm like,
Wow."
how do
Like,
you do this with like 10 people a day? However many people a day. You're like,
the
like,
things that Melissa like, the amount of things that had to be changed in my first cycle, because I got her for the second one too. I was like, your house is massive in heaven. It's massive. The things that you like, your capacity is unmatched. Unmatched. I
And she has that just that calming voice where you're like, oh, everything in this world is going to be okay.
when we
Like when
met in
she
person,
talks to you, you're just like, oh my gosh, Melissa.
like, held on to her. I'm like, Melissa, I love you. You're literally like how I'm feeling in a text message and phone call is how you are in person. Like,
It's
oh, it's
true.
incredible. Incredible.
It's
Yes.
that's
true.
humans.
And they're
Yeah.
all like all of your coordinators were like that too.
Yeah.
Who did else did I met? Well, obviously Katie. I met another coordinator as well. Incredible. I was like, I just want to hang out with you guys.
I have to say we're a really fun crew. We are. We're a really fun
Very fun crew.
We gather that.
Very fun crew.
Well, again, like right, like it's that heart and soul. It's people who see you as people. You're not numbers.
Yes.
You're like
Yes.
you have been invested in just as people, and that's a big deal.
And it says a lot about like
Yes.
our headspace, Sarah. Like we just went in and we're just like, hey, we're just here to help.
I think just it was a good experience. It was, as a human, it's like it's a weird experience, but like it's nice to be able to like again be on places like this and hear people like you, Chelsea, where like you had such a similar experience, even being in a different walk of life, and like
Mhm.
again joking with you, Whitney, that like yeah, low key thought you guys were a scam at first, and just I think coming back and expressing that, but I think like I highly recommend again if you're in a headspace to do it with like being an egg donor, do it because
Oh,
I feel
Yeah.
like at some points like
1,000%. Yeah.
I have a much wider, I guess, perspective, a much better
Mm,
perspective, I think, from my
Oh,
experience doing it.
yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Definitely. Definitely.
So,
Oh, I love it. Okay. Final question. It's a fun one. So, for anyone who knows me, they know that I have a very codependent relationship with coffee. So, let me ask you, despite the fact that we are recording this, like, well, I'm in Central Time Zone, so 8:20 in the evening. But, okay, what filled your cup this morning? Literally or figuratively, what filled your cup?
Well, funny thing, I actually spilled my coffee this morning
Oh,
out
that
of my
hurts my
car.
heart to hear. Oh
okay.
no.
It really did. Right when you said that, I was like,
Well,
Yeah,
no
so it
coffee
really
for
did.
me. Oh, that
But
hurts my heart.
what made my day, so I travel with work. I work all over my city.
Yeah.
And I kind of do OT with young kids and stuff. And so I had actually not been to this particular school in about a year. So I hadn't seen them or
Mm.
anything. But I'm friends with some of the directors of the school. And so I walked in and I just hear, Coach Chelsea. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I work with kids 24/7. Like that
Yeah.
it's a humbling job. And these like four directors like wrapped their arms around me and I was like, "Oh my gosh." And they're like, "How have you
Oh.
been? How's life? How's your son?" And like all this stuff, like how's co-parenting? And they just wanted they gave me some value this morning. And I was like,
Oh.
"Okay." Like, I was late. I had to do my classes, and I had to go to my boss' houses to pick up equipment. She called me, and so when I got to her house, she's like, "Hey, were you good?" And I told her what happened, and she was like, "You needed that, didn't you?" And I was like, "I
No,
did. I
Oh,
did. It made
I
my
love
day."
that. It
And
feels
it
good
sets
to
the
be
tone. It
recognized.
did. And
Yes.
I was doing stuff, never, we asked, "What are you doing when you get off work?" And I don't have my son tonight, he's at his dad's, and everyone kinda just, like, "Are you going to your friend's house? What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm actually gonna do a podcast." They're like, what for what?"
yeah.
For about my egg
Wow.
donation journey. They're like, "Wait, what?" So,
Oh, I
it
love it. I love
it
it. And that
set the
just
tone
starts
for
it. Now
the
you get to
day.
talk about it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so everyone's like, "Well, tell me when it comes out." I'm like, "Well, okay." So, it was good. It was
Oh,
sweet.
yay.
It was cute. So, besides the coffee spilling, and did I get more coffee? No, but, that was my
It sounds
budget.
like your cup was filled in another way.
Yeah. I think
What
for
about you,
me,
Sarah?
we're in a very caffeine dependent household, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
occasionally, like, my husband's, schedule changes every month right now with his training, and so, which is, difficult, but we make it work. And he this month has been kind of leaving, about 30 minutes to an hour before me, still pretty early in the morning.
Ooh,
And so, it's funny because it's just like one of those crazy times of life when you're like, when you
two
try to
ships
catch up with
passing in the
friends and
night.
you're like, yeah, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what's been up with you? I know you've been checked out. I've been checked out. Let's talk about it. And
Yeah.
this week has been kind of that with him and I.
Mm.
And so we were talking, and saw him a little bit this afternoon when we were off work. And I called him on the way home, calling him about work, or, just talking about random stuff during the day.
Sure.
And, he was like, "Okay," and we were talking about, like, he was like, "Oh, what do you wanna do tonight? Yada, yada," and I was like, "Oh, well, I have that podcast with Egg Donor Solutions." He was like, "Really?" And, like, he was like, "Okay, let me know because I wanna hear it too." 'Cause she was, like, downstairs
Oh.
listening. So I don't know, just having people I think that are supportive, and I think, um, like I said, just kinda reflecting back on this, like, "Oh, I was," had my, like every 22-year-old, probably my head on my butt in so many ways, and I did this actually really cool thing at that time. Um, I don't know, just being able to, like, talk with you guys, and, I think if people, kinda be excited about it. So,
Yeah. Oh, it
I
feels
love
so
that.
good. It feels
yeah.
so good. Yeah. No, you're so right. The first time I was a surrogate, I was 25. Yeah, 25, 26, 26, 20, yeah, 25, 26. And I remember just going through it and it was like, yeah, I'm doing this and whatever. And then it wasn't honestly probably until afterwards, like maybe like a good year. And I was like, oh yeah, that was maybe like a big deal. Like that was
Wait, like,
maybe
after you had delivered the baby, it kinda
after,
hit you.
after,
What?
very much after. I was, because it was just like, oh, I could just
Really?
no, exactly like what you said, Chelsea, and you, Sarah. It was like, take my eggs. I'm not using them. Why
Yeah.
not? Like, it was
Whatever.
just like
Yeah.
whatever. And
Very
I was
true.
like, hey, I'm done having kids. Like, and I can do this, and I'm actually quite good at it. So yeah, let me,
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm good at
And
carrying the babies, right?
yeah, and so it was just yeah, but it's so funny that you both like in retrospect, it's like, oh no, that was like a big deal, and like
Kinda did a thing.
Yes.
yeah, I
Like,
did a thing. I did
it's
a
yes.
thing.
It's always funny to hear somebody else's, like, I know how special it is. I do, I really
Uh-huh.
do. But,
Yeah.
time goes on. Like, when I was thinking about how
Yeah, life
long
doesn't
ago
stop,
it was,
right? Like life does
it
not stop. You
doesn't.
keep, whatever. Like what? The very
Yeah.
next day after your egg donation, it was like, okay, and like moving on. Like,
Yeah, I
Yeah,
had to go pick up
exactly.
my son from school, and there we go. Like,
yeah,
I got off the airplane, and there it was, back to work.
exactly. Well, you guys, I am so grateful for your time. I'm grateful for just you being a part of, this tribe that is Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions. And I know your intended parents are just have been so blessed by you and continue to be. And I have loved getting to know you guys. And I love that you guys are here to spread the good word that is, hey, this was amazing. And you're so glad you did it. And I am so glad you were here. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will talk to you guys soon, I am sure. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Me, You, and Who podcast. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed our discussion today.
As we wrap, we would like to remind you of some of the ways to stay connected with us and be part of the Me, You, and Who podcast community. Firstly, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode and can stay up to date with our latest content. But that's not all. We also have an exciting YouTube channel where we share some bonus content, behind the scenes glimpses, and video versions of our episodes. Head over to your YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button there as well. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the new episodes go live. For more exclusive updates, engaging discussions, and a chance to connect with fellow listeners, be sure to follow us on our social media accounts. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Egg Donor and at Surrogate Solutions. As a friendly reminder, the podcast is made possible by Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions. If you're interested in creating a happy family, visit www.createahappyfamily.com to learn more information. Again, thank you for being part of the Me, You, and Who community. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and join us next time as we share journeys of creating happy families.